bringing you my 10 must-start players for Week 7 fantasy football. And if you're one of the 84% of people that are not currently subscribed, hit that subscribe button, answering every start-sit question this season. And we're starting it off with the running backs. And when we start to look at the running backs, first guy this week is going to be Chuba Hubbard. And we talked about Chuba Hubbard as a start last week. I think it's another great matchup for Chuba Hubbard this week, where in full PPR, I do have Chuba as a top 10 running back. I actually have him projected right around 16.3 fantasy points this week versus Washington. They're going to have to throw the ball out. They're going to have to run the ball out. We'll have to see if Jonathan Brooks comes off of IR at some point. But Chuba Hubbard is a guy that I continue to want to ride until we start to see Jonathan Brooks do anything of any sort of substance. So definitely be going and targeting some Chuba Hubbard this week. Start him with confidence. Absolutely love where Chuba Hubbard is this week in fantasy football. My second player that's a must-start player at the running back position, we are going to be talking about Jordan Mason going back to the well. And I hear you, it maybe hasn't been the best last few weeks for Jordan Mason by any stretch of the imagination, like last week when he did get that shoulder injury and then versus Arizona in week 5. But I am going back to the well versus Kansas City. I know the Kansas City Chiefs front seven, it is scary. I hear you. It can be scary to go up against. But Jordan Mason, I do have him projected right around 14.3 fantasy points. So I think you got to have him in your lineup. He's a top 15 running back for me this week. Go and start Jordan Mason. Like we said, we're starting to get to a point where there's a lot of guys kind of on the fringe of RB2 territory. We do have some studs at the top, but a guy like Jordan Mason, I definitely want to be putting in my lineup going forward. My next player, running back, that I would be starting this week is going to be Kareem Hunt in that same exact matchup versus the San Francisco 49ers. And Kareem Hunt came out with a vengeance before the bye week versus New Orleans, absolutely demolished with 17 fantasy points. Now coming back into this week 7 matchup versus San Francisco, they have given up. It's a pretty good matchup for Kareem Hunt, especially with the fact that he did in this game show that he was able to maintain a bell cow status with 27 carries. I'm not saying that he's going to be continuing to get 27 carries week in and week out, but Kareem Hunt is clearly the one for me. I know CEH is potential coming off of IR. You got, when is Isaiah Pacheco going to come back? Because that's probably going to kill the Kareem Hunt train until we start to see these changes. Kareem Hunt for me is a must start week in and week out. So I love some Kareem Hunt this week. I do have Kareem Hunt sliding in as a top 19 running back for me. Have a projection of right around 13.7 fantasy points. So excited to see what Kareem Hunt can do. Definitely have to be starting some Kareem Hunt. Now, we talk about the running backs. Let's talk about some wide receivers that you must be starting this week in fantasy football. Number one is going to be Cooper Kupp. And you're probably like, Caleb, I've been waiting for Cooper Kupp to come off of injury. Of course, I'm going to be starting Cooper Kupp this week. I understand there's sometimes a little bit of concern of a player coming off of injury and being like, hey, how productive, Caleb, is a guy like Cooper Kupp going to be? For me, I still have Cooper Kupp projected right now as a top 15 wide receiver. Now, he logged a limited practice on Wednesday. I'm recording this Thursday before the actual practice reports come out, but I assume that if he logged a limited practice on Wednesday, that he will be playing this week. And I know we probably need to be keeping some close ties on him, but when we're looking at this matchup versus Las Vegas, it's a juicy matchup for this Rams team, especially with Cooper Kupp coming back, being the clear one with no Puka Nacua. We saw in that week 1 game when he was fully healthy, Cooper Kupp absolutely pop off. So you got to feel very confident. If you've waited around for Cooper Kupp in your IR spot, definitely start him with some confidence this week. The next guy we're going to be talking about is going to be Jordan Addison for the Minnesota Vikings. And Jordan Addison is a little bit more of like a, I would say, down the line type start, because you probably were debating him in a start sit decision. So if you have a start sit decision for Jordan Addison, let me know down below. But Jordan Addison going up against Detroit, I have Jordan Addison projected for 12.6 fantasy points this week. And I have him right as a top 27 wide receiver. I have him as my wide receiver 24 this week. And I understand there's a lot to like with Jordan Addison. There's also a lot of worry. You got JJ on the other side. Sam Darnold's been cooking. Is Aaron Jones going to play? And the last time we saw Jordan Addison in that London game versus the Jets, we saw him only have 8 targets for 3 receptions. But the fact is he did get 8 targets. And so as much as he had a ton of targets, he didn't produce any type of fantasy points. But in that week 4 game, we did see him get a total touchdown. So I'm not saying that Jordan Addison is like touchdown or bust. He's definitely hovering right now around that back end wide receiver 2 to early wide receiver 3 territory week in and week out. Jordan Addison is fully healthy coming off of a bye. So I'm excited to see what Jordan Addison is going to be able to do, as the Detroit Lions offense has been absolutely cooking. So I have a feeling that Jordan Addison and this Minnesota Vikings team, they're going to have to throw a ball a ton to keep in this game. Vegas has a pretty high scoring game. So for me, I am all over Jordan Addison this week as a must start, and I hope you guys are too. My next must start player for this week, it's going to be JuJu Smith-Schuster. Maybe I'm all over the Kansas City Chiefs and their weapons, but Kansas City for me, and JuJu kind of came in, got signed off of the free agent board and entered in this offense and put up 8 receptions for 70 7 yards and 8 targets for 7 receptions and 130 yards in this game. And JuJu Smith-Schuster looked absolutely elite. I just cannot say enough good things about JuJu. Like, you got to be starting him all over the place this week. Have him as a top 30 wide receiver, especially when you're looking at your flex rankings. JuJu Smith-Schuster, unless you're absolutely loaded, will be making your lineup. Now, let's go and move to some quarterbacks, and let's move to some tight ends. When we start to talk about the quarterback landscape, first guy I want to talk about is in that same Detroit Lions and Minnesota Vikings game. It's going to be Sam Darnold, and I have Sam Darnold exceptionally high in my quarterback rankings this week. I have him as a top 8 quarterback, have him going and projected right now at about 17.10 fantasy points. Now, I have him behind a Joe Burrow, so I'm excited to see what Sam Darnold's going to be able to do, because for the last few weeks, when we're looking at week 5 versus the Jets, it was not good, but we have seen what Sam Darnold has been able to do before when we're looking at that first 4-week sample size. So I'm going to continue to bank on that, especially with the Jordan and Addison healthy, especially with the Justin Jefferson. Got to feel really good about Sam Darnold. My next guy that you need to be starting, it's going to be Baker Mayfield for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I just talked about these two guys. I know you probably know to start Baker if you're debating it, but we've had a lot of discussions like, Caleb, should I start Baker or should I start Kyler Murray? Like, there's a lot of teams like that, and I feel like this is the week versus Baltimore. Not that Baltimore is any type of defense to be a slouch over, but we've kind of seen Baker on a heater these last 3 weeks. I want to continue to ride the hot hand. He threw for 4 total touchdowns last week. So if you have Baker, confident, revving him up to get him ready to start, because I do really like some Baker Mayfield as a starter level caliber quarterback for me on my team. And then let's move over to the tight end position, where last week I told you to start 2 tight ends that were absolutely cheeks. And so me coming back to the well, I do not know how confident I am telling you guys to start tight ends, because let's be clear, on my own fantasy football teams, I am not feeling good about it at all. We'll start off with my first tight end that I am starting this week. It's going to be Tucker Kraft. I am going back to the well with Tucker Kraft, because last week I had him as a high rated tight end, and he just did not look good at all last week, but I'm going back to it. I have him as a top 10 tight end this week. Last week only had 1 fantasy point. Of course, had 20 the week before. So the week that you probably didn't put him on the bench, he sucked. The week you put him in his lineup, he sucked. So honestly, 4 targets for 2 receptions, 13 yards. Didn't really get the opportunity that we wanted to see. Like we said, this offense, there's so many mouths between a Jaden Reed, between a Christian Watson, between a Romeo Doubs, between a Davion Wicks, between a Josh Jacobs in the backfield. I understand it's going to be hit or miss for a guy like Tucker Kraft, but I do like this matchup versus Houston. Think it's a really good matchup for Tucker Kraft to kind of take advantage of, as it will be high scoring up and down the board. And my last and final tight end I'm telling you to start this week, it is going to be David Njoku for the Cleveland Browns. Listen, they're going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. This offense looks trash. Deshaun Watson looks trash. They just got rid of Amari Cooper. So there's one thing that's going to be clear. David Njoku is going to get a crap ton of targets. Now, are the targets going to produce actual fantasy football points? I do not know, but we will find out this next week. And I have David Njoku, especially if you don't have an elite level Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, Trey McBride type level tight end. I would be very confident starting David Njoku this week. So if you like fantasy football, if you are one of those that have not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and check out these 2 videos if you haven't already. Appreciate you guys answering every start sit question once you're here in the community, trying to help you win a fantasy football championship in 2024. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.